for the planning commission and of course the planning department as far as if it requires some sort of modification to the subdivision codes and regulations, or if it's already there, that's,
I don't think it's there, but,
right.
I mean, I know it's a drainage issue that y'all get stuck with after the fact.
We do. You're absolutely right.
And, it doesn't really impact people when it's just a normal rain, but in a storm event, it can be probably pretty daunting.
Right.
So Randy, I'm having a hard time, hearing and following exactly, what the concern is. I mean, so rear lot drainage, I mean, is that what you're talking about? I mean, what are
When
we?
the lots don't drain to the street, it drains to the rear of the lot, which typically crosses the lot behind it. Or if it's on a slope perpendicular to the street, it's cross drainage from one lot to the next in the rear. And there can be a lot of water built up in the rear of these lots. I mean, I've get a flood sometimes. I've had as much as 7 inches of water in my backyard for short periods of time. But what happens is the privacy fences stop all the drainage. And then one neighbor gets mad at another neighbor. I don't know what the solution is unless it was taken to effect, care of at the time the subdivision's designed. If it's a huge drainage problem, they'll put a ditch or something in the back. But just, and I don't know, if has to be some kind of drainage area calculations. If there's a certain amount of water, then maybe it comes into effect.
That might be a question better suited for an engineer. If you don't mind weighing in on that.
Yeah, sure. So what you'll typically see is, for instance, our largest neighbor, Little Rock, does not have an ordinance like that because Little Rock's relatively hilly. Go up north, Conway does have an ordinance like that because it's pretty flat. Typically where you see a requirement for a concrete drainage swale, it's not necessarily to intercept water, but it's because if the area is relatively flat and you've got, let's say, 2 homes that both drain to the back, and then there's not some sort of concrete drainage swale there to get the water out of there, then it becomes a real nuisance. It can, breed mosquitoes and the like. If your neighbor's house is a lot higher than yours is, but he has a lot of grade and you don't, then it can create that problem where your backyard can flood. Typically, if his house has a lot of grade, then yours does too, and the water will drain through. Sherwood's kind of got some of both of that. I'll say in Conway, the requirement for those drainage swales to be concrete was only passed in the last 5 to 10 years. The subdivision ordinance until then said that every lot had to drain either to the street or to a drainage easement, but there was no requirement for that easement needing to be concrete again until about, I would say, 6 or 8 years ago, and that was a maintenance issue that caused the city to decide to make them concrete.
I'm pretty sure they have it in Brighton, and I know Brighton has it. I mean, my house, I've got a wide backyard. It's probably 120 or 30 foot across the back, and it slopes perpendicular to the street. It's a river back there. I mean, I dealt with it, but I didn't spend a lot of effort doing it. But I don't know. In my neighborhood, there's always somebody griping about drainage from one neighbor to another.
Right.
It's pretty hilly over there.
Yeah, and so it's easier to accomplish something like what you're talking about in an area that's not that hilly. Because if you can imagine, if it's really hilly and you put in a drainage well to try to intercept that water, then it's really easy for that drainage well to overflow its banks then and end up in your yard anyway. So that's why I'd say typically you see that in more flat areas than you do in hilly ones. Not saying it's a bad idea, but that's really what I wanted to provide is the clarification that most of the ordinances like that I see, that's how they accomplish it. It's not necessarily a requirement that something drain to a concrete ditch. It's a requirement that all the water drain either to right-of-way or easement. And then it's a decision, again, based on, and then if those ditches that get put in are not steep enough that they'll kind of keep themselves clean, then it maybe becomes necessary that they be concrete.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it in terms of big, deep ditch, more of a swell, just a little concrete swell to divert the water on out.
Yeah, well, so.
Nothing very, not just deal killers for developers, I'm not about that, but.
Right, yeah, and it was, I'll say, I was in Conway when they started requiring those ditches to be concrete. It was almost like a semantics thing, because there was an ordinance that said everything had to drain to a drainage easement, and then there was another ordinance that said all ditches had to be concrete. Well, then it was a question of, well, these little swales that people are putting in the backyards, are they ditches or not? And they had always kind of been viewed as swales, not ditches, but then over years of lack of maintenance, they became problematic, and then the city decided to start calling them ditches and require them to be concrete. And developed a detail, I think, that's required it to be 2 feet wide and at least 6 inches deep or something like that.
And I think in a lot of cases too, things change over time. I mean, property owners do certain things on the property now. As it relates to, rules and regulations for subdivisions, I mean, that would be something, Randy, we would kick over to the planning commission, and then they would look at and roll from there. And if that's something that needs to be done, I mean, we can certainly, ask that they take a look at it and see if there's anything else that they need to do from a planning commission perspective, because they're the ones who look at all the plats and how things are working, where the water's gonna go when it rains, how much it's gonna be and all of that. So, yeah, that would really be a planning commission, item for them to address.
If it's a problem that needs to be addressed, there's obviously a model. There's, several cities that have got similar ordinances, so there's a model to accomplish that. There's always good and bad to everything. So the good part of that, of doing something like that, is that it does provide drainage infrastructure that can help alleviate some of those complaints. Some of the downsides of it, aside from the cost of the developer, are that when you require drainage ditches to be installed between houses, then if it's in a drainage easement, presumably it is, then it requires Brian to maintain them if there's a problem. And otherwise, if you write the ordinance in such a way that the neighbor has to maintain it, what's really common is you get people that will put their fences up against both sides, and then you've got like 3 or 4 feet of no man's land that nobody wants to maintain. So we try to require them all to be on one property or the other, rather than in the middle where that wouldn't be a no man's land, but then then the people that had the concrete swale in it didn't like it. A lot of them would tear it up without permission. So those are just the things to think about.
Right. Yeah. And to echo on what Kevin said, when we walk a new subdivision, all the ground's graded, there's no fences, the water, you can walk it and look at the road and tell that the water's just gonna cascade across the entire property line. It's got 100 feet to kind of drift over to the next property. It works well until people put up fences. That traps it, carries it to one low corner, and then it tends to dig under, and you end up with a concentrated flow into the person's backyard adjacent. Or when we do get to concrete swale ditches, people put the fence right against the concrete swale ditch. The water then runs right along the edge of the ditch, and it undermines the concrete swale. And at one point in time, I shared your opinion that there ought to be a cutoff ditch, concrete behind every house, but I don't know, there's a lot of pieces that we're missing. I haven't seen the perfect scenario yet, I don't think.
Honestly, I think the truth of the matter is there are situations where it really is a good idea, and there are situations where it's maybe unnecessary, but it's difficult to regulate that. It's difficult to regulate, it's difficult to write legal language that says that you have to put it in when you need it.
Right.
So you have to decide which side of the area you want to err on.
Gotcha. Well, we'll, I don't know, I guess if that needs to go over to the planning commission, we'll ask that they take a look at it and roll from there. So, appreciate you bringing that up, Randy, thank you. Anything else under Public Works? Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, our overlay program, Brian, you talked a little bit about the budget there. How are we coming along?
They just started their milling right now on the roads in the Miller's Crossing area. They're planning on starting paving behind the milling crew probably Monday or Tuesday next week, but it's still early in the project, but they're working at it. They expect to spend a couple, 2, maybe 3 weeks in that area. There's quite a few roads right there in that general vicinity, but
And where did you say they were at?
in the Miller's Crossing
Miller's
area
Crossing,
right
okay.
now.
Okay.
So,
All right, appreciate that. Any questions, comments about our overlay status? Okay, we'll move on. Our sales tax project update, got some fancy photos here, Lon. You wanna walk us through, where we are and how things are moving along?
Things are going pretty good. If you go out there today, you can actually see the outlines of what looks like a road. We got Smith Underground completed the house line service for sewer, and that gets it out of the way so that they can finish laying the pipes for the flared end sections. CPC filled in fixed the road where that took place. And they also did flowable fill in all the old conduits under the road that were really aging. The 2 inlet boxes that we reported that were defective have been ripped out, and they are getting replaced. We've got Mobley contractors out there. They really are kicking butt on the 7 Bay culvert and the pedestrian underpass. The pictures that you see here, most all of the walls are now complete, so they're moving right along. We've got Steve Deere has a new subdivision going in back there, and he has a sewer line that is going to be right under the floor to this box culvert. And we unfortunately told him he had to wait, and we don't want to stop our crew so his crew can come in and tear it up. But the manhole that they're connecting to is right under that temporary road.
So where are you looking at, Lon?
We're over right here. So the Steve Deere is gonna put a manhole here, and then he wants to go through here and connect to another manhole for Runyon Acres that's already 18 feet under the road. So he has to wait for that to get cleared out. But he's understanding, and he says just keep us in the loop, and when we get the chance, he'll get his crew in there to get it done. But I think it's like a 335 house neighborhood that he's building out there. Mobley's also taken a day or two. They're slowing down a little bit because half their crew has come down with COVID. So it's going around again. That's for phase 1. Phase 2, we're still doing acquisitions. We got 3 of them just the other day. Got another one coming up, probably get tomorrow. So we're moving on those. Sherwood Acres, we're still waiting on grant funding.
Any new news about that?
I have not heard anything. I think we're waiting till what, September? We might hear something about the grant for Sherwood Acres.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I can reach out.
That's a different one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's Tracy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure,
okay,
Acres.
yeah.
But yes, he had said it was September.
Yeah, that's what Tracy, last time I spoke with Tracy about it, sometime around, I think the latter part of September, he was expecting to maybe have some sort of news on it.
Yeah, and that's like basically 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
It's worth waiting for, and there was a affliction
God bless you.
that backyards were caving in, but that's not there's not massive sinkholes everywhere.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay. Next item under old business, the Briar Street name, just closing the gap here from our last meeting. The 911 records did spell it with an E, not an A, so that was changed.
It was spelled with an A, not an E.
The other way around,
That's
okay.
right. And
Gotcha.
it was changed back to an A.
Gotcha. So really, just leaving that on here, close the gap. I mean, that won't be an issue, or an item for discussion any further, so.
You want to pull it off for next month?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
there's no need to have that on there. I appreciate the quick action there as well. Thank you very much. The homeowner who was questioning that was appreciative. Okay, next under new business, the Kellogg Road drainage. Mr. Galloway?
Yes, this is something we'd kind of like the committee to weigh in on and consider. There's been multiple complaints over the last several years about the drainage. This portion of Kellogg Road from Loop Road down to just a little bit north of Miller Road where the roadside ditch begins, it's very flat, minimal grade. Loop Road has roadside ditches that just drain out into Kellogg Road, and there's no storm drain on Kellogg Road to accept it, so the water flows for about 540 feet at a very slow rate down the curb line of the road, and it stays extremely wet for several months out of the year because it's flat. There's actually a spot, there's a little bit of a belly in it where water doesn't really flow. And so we had an engineer look it over and give us some sort of cost estimate on what it would cost to design it and possibly what we could expect if we put it out to bid to remedy the problem. It's a substantial amount of money for a short piece of road, but it's something to consider. At this point, looks like we could go on and design it for about $20,000, have it set on the shelf as a project to put in for a grant. From what I understand, this area is probably not as likely to receive grant funding due to there's some nicer homes, income level may not be in our favor, but we'd just like some other opinions and thoughts on it.
Brian, going north, further out there, I'm not sure where the line is. What do we maintain that where the actual ditch starts there on the west side?
Yes, sir.
So
Because that would, anything within Kellogg Road's right-of-way would be ours.
Okay.
The right-of-way is Sherwood's. Now, just the other side of that right-of-way, probably somewhere around 11 feet behind the edge of the road, you'd get into the city of North Little Rock. And
okay.
I don't think there's any Pulaski County that comes up to that part. There's some Pulaski County on the Mine Road side over there.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be
That-
ours to maintain.
That's right.
The whole way. Okay.
That ditch is ours.
I was just wondering. I mean, obviously, y'all have looked at it, but it's hard to tell on here how far north you're going there. But even where that ditch starts,
We would-
it's rock lined or whatever.
Yeah.
It's still and that may be something that can just be
Right.
maybe redone, or not to the extent this
Right.
is, but there's some issues there still. I think even with
Well, the rock was put in there because it was eroded
yeah,
where it was extremely deep. So why we put the rip in there,
yeah,
it's really B-stone, but the water kind of flows under that for the most part. It hits the B-stone, but this pipe would daylight about where that rock begins. It would just convey the water from Loop Road that has roadside ditches that drain and empty into Kellogg. It would convey the water underground down to that ditch, keep it out of the lane.
okay.
The property that's zoned to that's due west of this area, is that zone residential or commercial? How would any improvements, I guess, affect going forward?
You know, I couldn't answer that question. That's North Little Rock, what's west of it. I know there's a person building a fairly large house up there right now, so I'm gonna say it's residential, and I think he owns the biggest part of that hilltop, but without doing a little further research, I don't know. It'd be real hard to, you know, the way the road's cut through that hillside, I would think it would be hard to ever, access that property from Kellogg Road. You know, that's why you can't dig a roadside ditch there, is the way that hillside's cut in there. And there's a, you know, gas line, and you can see the gas line exposed in places on the side of the road. The gas line's actually higher than the curb height. You know, where some of the washes, the scour's taking place coming down into the road.
So what's the, I mean, other than some slow drainage, I mean, what's the, do we have property damage now? I mean, what, road damage, what's?
The real issue is, you know, it creates a slick, hazardous condition, during freezing weather when it's wet. It tends to get really muddy, you know, because there's no fall there. There's a lot of erosion that takes place out of the roadside ditches and such that accumulates on the asphalt. I think, you know, it gets people's cars dirty traveling through it. And it takes a toll on the asphalt. You know, that road was laid about 8 years ago, and that area that stays wet now is starting to show pretty significant signs of wear. You know, we obviously have to overlay it more often because of that, the water staying on it over time. You know, it's something, it'll have to be fixed someday. You know, the question is it today? Or do we start looking at it?
And I don't know that it's by any means all cosmetic, because there's several curves through there, and if my recollection is right, driving that, because that is a road I drive daily, that you know, that water gets out in that east lane, or maybe the west lane, you know, pretty good, and can get to a pretty good level to where, you know, it is a safety hazard somewhat too.
Mm-hmm.
$273,000, a lot of money, because the road gets frozen over and gets dirty. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's not a project to look at. But I mean, what's the will of the committee? What do you guys think?
So this is, the right of way of the road butts up to North Little Rock city limits? So we're basically curing North Little Rock's problem. I know
Well, it's
our
our
road.
problem.
I know
The
it's our
road-
road, but
The
on
road
the east side
belongs
of the
to
road
us.
is Sherwood.
Yes, the road belongs to us. We have to clean it. We have to overlay it. You know, we have to maintain it. Any wrecks that take place on it, you know, the PD has to work. It's the Kellogg Road and that portion of it, well, all the way down to the curve is the city of Sherwood's to maintain.
Is that open shoulder there now, or is there curb and gutter there? Is that,
There's,
is there part curb and gutter? Is that?
best I can tell is, I think it was originally concrete with one of those little 4-inch square curbs poured on top of the concrete, and it's been filled in with overlays, which makes the curb almost non-existent.
Yep.
That's,
It's pretty well roadway, or you're in the ditch.
that's right. There's just not a lot of solution to it other than storm draining it. I looked at and talked with this engineer about maybe pouring a longer, kind of more sloped curb back in there and just carrying it down, but your fall's just so minimal that, and then you're gonna have a curb that during icy conditions, people's gonna slide off in and be hard to get out of on that hill, and it's one of the things, if you're gonna do it, just do it right and don't think about it anymore.
I mean, the construction on the corner there, I mean, should have no bearing on any of that water issue as far as creating any more once a lot of that gets asphalted and concrete and so forth, because that should be caught up on that east side, correct?
Yes.
I like the idea of using, grant money to do stuff like this. I like that a whole lot.
And you know, it's possible. That's one thing about, you know, you design it, you put them on the shelf, you've got something to throw in the hat. Finley, do you have any idea what the likelihood of receiving some sort of something from Central Arkansas Planning or something for a
If
little?
there was a flooding hazard, it would be pretty high. If it's cosmetic, it's pretty low.
You can say that again, flooding hazard is high.
So there's, you know, I've won grants several times from from the state of Arkansas to alleviate flooding concerns or to repair damage from flooding. But I'm not sure that that's the case here. I think this is more of a, it is potentially, I'm not saying it's not a legitimate project. I just don't think the grant funding that I'm thinking of that's available is more flooding oriented than it is drainage and safety oriented. It's honestly, it's kind of a chronic problem, not just statewide, but nationwide, that there's not a lot of grant funding for drainage unless it's specifically related to flooding.
Damage on property type
Yes,
flooding.
that's right.
So probably not a high likelihood of getting a grant for it. If we spend the $20K to design it, at some point, we're probably gonna have to find the money to build it.
Brian, how long is that stretch?
It's about 540 feet is what the curb's quoted on this thing. And when I measured it, somewhere in the 500-foot range, about 540 feet.
You know, the one thing that we could do is just kind of put this on the back burner and, you know, at some point, since it doesn't seem like there's much enthusiasm with the project, which is fine, you know, if we do come into some money, then we can maybe look at, this is a possible project, if that would be more amenable. We just wanted to, I think Brian just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention to see, do you want us to go forward, do you not? It's nothing,
So how long will it be before that road has to be widened and really improved? So we spend a bunch of money now, and 10 years from now, the traffic count's such that that's not an adequate road, and we have to widen it anyway.
I don't know if portions of it could be widened.
Oh, anything could be widened. I just don't know if that one will be one of the ones that become necessary, you know, that's gonna be of a real benefit or need as far as the amount of traffic moved or, I don't, do you have any thoughts on Kellogg Road as to whether it would? I don't really see the traffic volumes increasing that much on Kellogg.
Is your concern
So-
that if you put drainage on it, it'd be hard to widen later? Is that what?
Well, I mean,
It's valid
Just,
concern.
if we're gonna spend $270,000 and we're gonna widen the road in 10 years, I don't think it's a good investment.
Right.
If we're not ever gonna widen the road, it's fine, you know, that's my thinking. I don't know how much more traffic's gonna be on that road if the Cato area blossoms like the city hopes it will after all that money they're spending on the road.
I don't think,
Would that help Kellogg? I mean, it's gonna tie into Kellogg eventually. Okay, well, I know it's gonna.
Go down to Batesville Pike.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but doesn't this road eventually get up to where the Cato Road will intersect.
Yes, it
And I don't know if
intersects.
that's gonna cause any more traffic concerns on Cato in the future, at this end.
I would think it'd be more likely for the county's portion of Cato to need to be widened out to Batesville Pike to carry the traffic Cato to 107, possibly.
I would agree with that. How about if we table it and, Finley's gonna kind of take a closer look also and talk to Bear and come back with a recommendation next time.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, but I would also like to have more information about, you know, volume of people that are impacted. I mean, you know, I'm not awfully concerned about someone's car getting dirty. I mean, you know, but if we're talking, you know, road maintenance and then what does that look like? So does the overlay go from, you know, an every 10-year need to an every 2-year need, or what does it really impact, you know, to the city? I mean, and that's the kind of information I think I'd like to have.
It's probably, if I was gonna take a stab at that, you know, probably like a 15-year to about a 7.5, 8-year need.
Yeah, and then what's
So
the,
about twice as frequently, you're gonna have to overlay that,
gotcha.
at least that strip.
And then what does it cost to overlay that strip? I mean, on a every 7-year basis? I mean, are we talking,
Well, the thing is getting them out there for that strip. They're gonna have to mow. There's not a whole lot else in that area that you can tie to it. Because really Kellogg is the only thing that's ours other than Amber Oaks, which is a very low volume residential road. So they're gonna have to mow out there just for that job, but, so, you know, if it was 1,000 feet, if you came from 107 to the top, which is probably a little more than that, you know, it's probably right now at today's prices somewhere around a $50,000 project to overlay it.
okay, I mean, yeah, that's the type of information I think I need to really be able to make a good, assessment in on my behalf. Now, I don't know about, you know, what everybody else thinks.
Well, would there be any help or any possibility? Because it looks like from the map, actually, that little section of Loop Road is actually Pulaski County. Not that they have money they wanna give away either, but,
Right.
I mean, would there be any potential of possibly some type of partnership in part of that or anything?
I would really doubt it. You know, we could always ask, but I would be surprised.
Boy, y'all got some really good eyes.
I know the public works director, I'll check on that and see if it's worked out.
Check, see.
Data and money. Okay. Any will to address this any further this evening?
Let's let Finley look at it and I'll actually measure the road from 107 to the top of the ditch and get you some accurate numbers down to, you know, what it's costing to overlay today. And that'll help you a little
So,
bit.
and when did we overlay that last? I'd like to go look at it
Well,
myself too.
we overlaid it last, when the Miller Road deal came up. I was gonna overlay Miller Road in conjunction with that because we were gonna be, I overlaid Amber Oaks, I overlaid that, and I was gonna overlay Miller Road all at the same time to make a project. And Miller Road's not an option to tie to it.
Right, yeah,
so
that's been a while
That
back.
gives you kind of a marker. I'm guessing somewhere around 8 years ago, Kevin.
Okay.
But I can get that date for you too, or at least year that we overlaid it.
I'm
That'd be
thinking
great.
18,
Yeah.
2018.
So are they gonna do any improvements to Kellogg Road on the east side where the new development is? Is that gonna be a part of that process?
the Phoenix is going in, there's gonna be a detention pond and,
Oh.
there's gonna be another turn lane there, isn't there?
Well, I mean,
I haven't seen those plans, so I don't know.
it goes all the way back to Miller's Heights, I believe.
Yeah, it does go back to
So
Miller
I
Heights, or,
think maybe they might have some, just in that section, some improvements to be made as part of that development. They don't help the side you're on, though. It's probably not gonna happen, anything gonna happen on the west side, it's fully developed.
Okay, any other discussion here? Okay, we'll move on. Speed cushion, traffic calming policies, Mr. Galloway.
We've got a lot of information here. You know, what has this policy been in place? Year and a half, 2 years now, I guess, probably about a year and a half, and just kind of wanting to reevaluate it. I think, I did a little count today, and I think we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 speed cushions out now. You know, the way the policy is written right now, we're, you know, ending up with some, on some of the busier roads that, you know, in my opinion, you know, I'm not sure if we need them on Maryland, and we've got one on Maryland because it meets the criteria of this policy, the one in Stone Hill. And, you know, I guess the question is kind of put a little thought into it and think about if that's what we want. If it's not what we want, how do we work on modifying this policy to get more of what we want to see come out of it? You know, one of the things that was talked about doing was maybe increasing the threshold. Right now, the threshold that we use is 7 miles per hour over the speed limit. If more than 15% of the cars that travel the road are exceeding the speed limit by more than 7 miles per hour, that will warrant speed cushions. And of course, it also, there's other criteria here that, as far as number of cars a day that have to travel down the road before we'll put them on there. And then once they get in excess of 5,000 cars a day, we won't consider putting speed cushions on the roads. You know, there's a part in here about, I think, what is it, 10 driveways per quarter mile or something. The road has to have to get speed cushions installed. Of course, when we look at moving the threshold, if we moved it for all streets, collectors, arterials, you know, if we went to 10 miles per hour, if you notice these pages you have one with a measurement with a 7 mile per hour threshold, and then the same street, same measurement. If you move that enforcement tolerance to 10 miles per hour, you see what it does to the enforceable violations. Of course, it looks like when we move it to 10, most of the places we put speed cushions wouldn't have received them. So, you know, I'm not sure if 10 miles per hour would be the solution. I guess the first thing we've got to establish is, do we want to see speed cushions on Maryland, Oak Brook, some of the thoroughfares that actually convey, you know, that we need to convey traffic from one side of the city to the other. You know, if we deter people from using those thoroughfares, we push them over onto the residential roads. They're all residential roads. I guess that's not a good comparison, but we push them onto the less traveled roads that probably didn't have a problem to begin with. We'll create a problem on those roads.
And, Councilmember Lewis, you have someone here that wanted to speak about.
Sir, my name is Billy Holt. family's been living there since '85. My wife's family has been in Sherwood since Kill Avenue was a dirt road. There's a proposal for a speed cushion on Woodruff Avenue, and if it didn't need to be there, I wouldn't be here tonight, trust me. I would. Police officer Matthew Rodriguez has sat in my driveway. I've got with Captain Edwards. The first afternoon he sat there, he wrote 10 tickets in the first hour. The second day he sat there, he wrote 20 tickets in about 2 hours. And these are way over 10 miles an hour. 51, 56, I believe is the highest that they've been recorded on Woodruff. Now, I don't want to get into everybody's pocket, into people's pocket. I just want to slow down. My neighbor won't let his daughter go out and check the mail because the people will not slow down, and they won't get over. I mowed the yard this afternoon. I had 2 people blow right by me. I mow my ditch. I feel sorry for those city workers that have to weed eat those ditches on Woodruff Avenue.
We really appreciate you taking care of yours. Thank you.
It's a narrow road. Since I've been there, there's been 2 rollovers. And that was back in the 90s. There's been 2 rollovers. It's pretty steep in our area right
It
there.
is.
Where we're wanting the speed cushion. I was kind of happy that he said he had wrote some warning tickets, because with the economy, I know them tickets aren't cheap, and I know Sherwood doesn't make a whole lot off the speeding tickets. But it's a big problem. It's a big problem. And I called the city, and they said that the speed cushion had been put on hold. That's why I'm here tonight.
So Mr. Holt, you're in favor of the speed cushion on
I
Woodruff?
actually had the petition, took it around and had it signed.
Gotcha, okay. Well, I mean, I'll offer my opinion, you know, one of many, I guess. You know, hindsight being what it is, I mean, I'll be honest, I wished I didn't have to have any speed cushions. You know, that requires people to drive responsibly and not get out there and act like idiots. I mean, and the need got bad enough that we even had to consider the policy that we have in place today. So, you know, my thoughts, I mean, just, you know, looking at a map, looking at the policy as it is, I can see where you would potentially want a different threshold on a collector street than what you have on a local street or you know, just a residential street. I guess we call them local streets. Is that right, Finley? I don't have all the definitions in my head as to what's what.
Master street plan here in your packet.
Right.
It'll help you some with that.
He wrote 10 tickets this morning. And the first morning, he didn't get there till 10 o'clock. He didn't even get the people going to work. He was there, you know, and wrote like 20 tickets the first day, within like 3 hours. And they're 50, 40, now, and he told me he'd broke some warning tickets, and like I said, I was pleased to hear that. But if y'all want to, if you don't believe me, you can check his record, check his log, because.
Well, you know, I believe you on Woodruff. You know, the portion of Woodruff you're speaking of, it's narrow, it has deep ditches,
And I understand the fireman's point of view. I know the firemen don't like them, and I understand why. You know, those are heavy, heavy trucks.
But the portion there at 411, there's, that one's not in y'all's packets, but, you know, the area he's speaking of, it was 25% of the people are exceeding the 7 mile per hour threshold. It's, you know, it warrants it, and Woodruff, I don't know that Woodruff's one of the ones we're talking about right now, whether, you know, it's not a arterial or minor arterial or, you know, what I was speaking about earlier is a few of these others like Maryland and Oak Brook, some of the busier roads that we maybe would like to not use speed cushions or vertical deflection, as Finley calls
I don't have a problem
it.
with the roundabouts.
Right.
The roundabouts pushed them over to us, like you were saying, pushed them over, which, you know, hey, it is what it is.
Right.
I was a truck driver for 30 years. You know, if these people had seen 1/10 of what I've seen on the road, they wouldn't go from 80 pay to be and block everything else out. They'd go and pay attention to their surroundings,
Right.
you know. But they're not gonna slow down, and I don't wanna get in their pocket, real, you know, I really don't.
Well, getting in their pocket, that's up to them, you know, they have to behave, and
That's usually the
I
only
mean,
way they ever
you
slow
know,
down.
yeah, that's up to them. But, you know,
Those speeding tickets, I know, are expensive.
you know, just looking at the policy as it is today, and again, this is just my off-the-cuff thought. I mean, I can certainly see, that you would potentially want a different threshold from a local street to a collector. Not just in what's an enforceable, you know, speed limit, but also a collector's, you know, obviously gonna get more cars on it than a local street. So maybe there ought to be some tweaks there as well. The minor arterials, man, I would like to say that we should eliminate speed cushions on minor arterials, except I've personally witnessed what I've seen on Maryland, people between, you know, Brockington Road and where the houses really start. I mean, people are doing 45 and 50 miles per hour through there. And that is just absolutely ridiculous. And there's people that walk that sidewalk, I mean, and are there on a regular basis. So that gives me, you know, a pause in my thought there. But when I look at, you know, Keel Avenue, there's no way we could put speed cushions on Keel Avenue. I mean, that would be,
No, the state highway department wouldn't even allow us to do that.
yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at, you know, what's defined as a minor arterial. You know, you really want to be able to move traffic, but you need people to, act in accordance with the laws and the rules, and they just don't. I look at some of the streets that we've got defined as collectors, and, you know, while they fit the bill, and, you know, that's what they do, you know, people, you know, act like they're on an interstate, you know? So, I'm in favor of looking at the policy and trying to see, you know, what we can come up with, you know, from locals, collectors, and try to find a way to eliminate minor arterials from the policy. But I'm, you know, certainly interested in what everybody else's thoughts are as well.
One thing to consider on the strip of Maryland that you're talking about, there is a proposed subdivision right now that will, you know, likely be built at some point that'll eliminate that just strip of woods.
Right. And I get it too. I mean, I've been driving through there and looked down, and I'm doing, you know, 35 miles an hour. I'm going, whoa, you know? I mean, just because you don't have anything that visually says, hey, I need to be doing, you know, something different than what I'm doing.
Especially right there with the lanes, how wide they are, you know, that just gives you more freedom. to
You
go
were
even
spot
faster.
on. Spot
I
on.
just feel like there needs to be some type of maybe signage, flashing signage that, you know, slow or caution that you're entering a residential area or something. We're gonna have, I mean, that trail is gonna cross Maryland right through there, and it's like, people have gotta slow down. But it's like we gotta do something to wake people up. I don't know exactly. Well, tell them that.
Have y'all received a lot of blowback on the
Yes.
speed cushion on Woodruff?
Yes, sir.
I've had a little bit.
I wonder why. They don't wanna slow down.
They don't, and I mean, like, yeah, people get very upset about having to be inconvenienced and slow down, and they think it's a waste of money, but it's, you know, how much is a life worth, you know?
There's kids walk up and down the road. The people that I talked to and signed a petition said they would like to walk down the road at night, in the evenings. They can't do that because the people won't slow down. I've seen people slow down to 2 miles an hour across a steel plate that the construction construction's working on, and, but blow somebody's hat off when they go, somebody walking down the road. It just, a speed cushion will slow them down. It will slow them down. Or we can keep putting the police officer in my driveway. I don't mind. I just have to pick up a lot of trash in my ditch that they throw out in my yard.
The police.
No, the people. The people. And hey, I'll pick it up. If it'll slow them down, I'll pick up the trash. I don't care. But a speed cushion wouldn't slow them down. Now, the first night that we put the signs up, the city put the signs up, there was people, just retaliation, driving up, down the road as fast as they could, back and forth. Just aggravating me, just.
And just to warn you, because there will be those that are gonna rev their engines and do some stuff out of, it's going to be noisier for those, especially when school starts, because a lot of kids go through there, so.
And I understand, but it'll slow them down. It'll slow them down, and that's all we want. We want it to slow them down.
So,
It's been a problem since, it wasn't near as bad back in '99 when we built the house there, but, it seems like after Miller Crossing was built, then the traffic, but according to, Matthew, the people that's getting the tickets all live on Woodard.
That's usually the case.
All live on Woodard, so that surprised me.
and they signed the petition for the speed cushion?
No, they're further down. It's a long street.
Yeah, but the thing is, that where the new speed cushion's at, after you hit that new speed cushion, it is a straight shot. And I mean, and they'll come through there, there's a lot of tickets that he wrote that were over 40 miles an hour.
Huh?
How wide is it?
25.
About 20 foot of
So-
asphalt at best in that part, it's narrow.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing, the data collected, on Woodruff, and I'd also be interested in
Well,
seeing how many
got-
tickets we've actually,
You've got, where
is that in the
the,
packet?
it's in the packet, the one where the speed cushion has been installed is in your packet. The one that hasn't been installed, I've got one copy here that is in my folder. But this is the data for the one that's proposed by his house. That's correct.
Gotcha.
It has not
So-
been installed yet.
So the one that's been installed, even if you moved it to 10 miles per
If you
hour,
moved
it
it to
would,
10, it wouldn't have got installed. And that's what you're gonna find on most all of these. If you move that threshold, if you went to 10 miles per hour, it's important, only 10%. So you gotta get to 15% to warrant. That's why you run into the problem if you gotta move that enforcement tolerance. I think there's only one in that packet that's been installed. If you move that enforcement tolerance to 10, it would still be installed.
so where's the 15%? Where am I
It's
seeing
at
it?
85th percentile, and what that equates to is 15% of the people exceeding the speed limit.
It's definitely a problem there.
And that's after the other one was installed on Woodruff, it's still bad.
You know how many tickets I had 30 years ago,
You're right, it's 9.5.
Maybe they're going to Woodbridge because they don't make traffic service on there.
Right.
Maybe, but we don't have enough money to put traffic circles on the Woodruff.
Just
They're
saying
more
that might-
expensive.
I know, I'm just saying that might be the reason.
You know,
Body traffic.
Well, was there a traffic circle proposed at some point for Maryland and Oak Brook? I guess that, was it part of the bond project? Was that, I guess that money went towards other bond projects, or is that?
it ended up getting removed.
I think, wasn't there like driveways or something like right there in the,
You're going downhill on both sides.
Yeah, it's gonna be really tough.
gotcha. And then there was also supposed to be one back at, Maryland and Hemp Hill, but then there was another one on further back towards Brockington.
Well, I was just
So-
curious if some of that money was maybe still appropriated somewhere that could be, you know,
Right.
redevelop for a traffic circle on Woodruff.
So what's the will of the committee here? I mean, I don't, I've shared my thoughts, but what do you guys?
I think it's worth, if nothing but a cursory review after having it in place, what, you know, like you said, about a year and a half now, just to see from what we've heard and what we know, and, I mean, it's definitely worth that, I think. Whether we come up with changes or not, I don't know, but it's worth, you know, reviewing with our knowledge now.
I would tend to agree, you know, I think the main problem that I see with, you know, placement on one, and I'm gonna use like East Maryland, for example, is it drives traffic on other local roads to avoid them. I mean, I'm guilty of it, so.
I get it. You know, I would also, and while I'm just spilling my thoughts out here, I don't even know the name of the road, but up there in Lakewood, the road that runs between, like TGI Fridays and Edwards Food Giant and all, I mean, you know, they've put, speed cushions in there. That's how they ought to be. You ought to drive up there and check them out. That's what they ought to be. Theirs are built into the road. They're truly, if you're doing the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, you can truly roll over them and not feel like you're being knocked out of your vehicle. You know, so that's just a thought, while we're on the topic, So we want to look at this. I mean, is there any action we need to take this evening, or anybody, you know, proposals of changes to the policy that we need to?
Well, what I would ask is just some things that I see if you're gonna look at it, and offer some options and ways that we could help. You know, when you look at the policy, some ways to kind of adjust this might be looking at, you know, right now, the threshold is, if a street exceeds 5,000 cars a day, we won't allow speed cushions to be put on them with the current policy. Of course, if you look at this report, it has the amount of cars that were analyzed, it has the date that it was put out, picked up. You know, that kind of gives you an idea. If you do the math there, if it was out for 5 days and you divide the vehicles analyzed by 5, gives you the cars per day. That might give you some ideas of how you could adjust car counts, you know, to determine what collector, or, you know, maybe you look at it just from a car count standpoint. You know, anything that moves a certain amount of cars, we won't allow speed cushions on it. That's one way to do it. One way to do it for the threshold. Of course, if you look at these reports, and if you move from 7 to 10 miles per hour, it would exclude most of the ones that have speed cushions now. They wouldn't have gotten them. So I'm not sure if that's the way to go about it.
Yeah, so maybe the 85th percentile ought to be looked at too. I mean, you know, so what I'm hearing, Brian, is you're looking for a way to eliminate the speed cushions, and I think the people out there speeding are telling us that they really need them.
Well, no, that's not what I said. I'm not looking at a way to eliminate them. I'm looking at a way to, if somebody requests them to go on Maryland right now, and I study it, and it meets the threshold, I need to put it on there. And it doesn't matter to me whether we put them on Maryland or not. I'm just not sure if that's where we want them. If that's the will of the committee, if that's where we want them, I'm fine with it. But some of these other roads, Country Club, you know, when we put them on there, we move them to other roads, and that's the only reason we're asking it to look at this is that what we really want? If it is, that's fine.
I get it, but we knew this was gonna be a problem when this policy was brought up and passed.
I agree.
The problem is if you don't, how do you deal with it? I mean, and that was the issue we ran into while we've got this period.
I agree.
I mean, so
what? So
do you go back to the chaos and everybody's moaning and groaning and complaining about speeding, or what?
So what we can do, if you study this, if you want some different information, we can run this report with this data that was gathered any way you want it. We can change the tolerance to 8 miles an hour. We can change the speed limit and let you see what that does or how it affects if you want to modify it. We could also, like you said earlier, we could exclude minor arterials, which would alleviate a lot of the roads that are in question right now. It doesn't matter how we do it to me, or if we do it at all. It's just something we brought to you to consider.
No, I get it, and Brian, I'm not excited at you, I mean,
Yeah.
the whole topic is one that we've cussed, we've discussed, we've been back, we've been forth, we've been, sideways, and what's the answer, Chief can't put patrol cars everywhere all the time and write tickets. People just aren't slowing down, they're just not, and, people are calling and complaining about, speeders, but then when they got speed bumps, they complain about that. I mean, you're just not gonna be able to satisfy everybody. And I don't know what the answer is. I wish I had the crystal ball.
So Brian, have you done any study to see if they're effective after they're installed?
They are very effective. Most of the time, we can get you those reports, but we've run several of them, and you'll take one that 30% of the people are exceeding, and once you put it in there, if you measure it at that same location, it'll be 2% or 3%. I mean, they work. There is no question about it. It does work.
There is a caveat to that, though. They work really well at the location where the speed hump is installed. And once you get about 300 feet either side of it, generally, not necessarily just in Sherwood, but nationwide statistically, the speeds generally are the same. So you have to put a lot of them in order for them to be effective. And that's something to consider, is that, Brian, I know what Brian's thinking, because I'm thinking the same thing. You got 14 right now. The policy, the way it is, 3 or 4 years, you might have 100. And that's something he's just wary of. And if that's the way that the city wants it, then I don't think he's saying that's bad. He just is kind of seeing the writing on the wall. The other thing I wanted to say is there are other methods for slowing people down that are less effective than putting in speed humps every 600 feet. That is definitely the most effective way to slow people down. There are other things that we could try that are less effective, but that are, that interfere less with people's travel. Things like, delineators and radar speed sensing signs and things like that. That might be some things you might want to consider in arterials or flares.
Finley, I'm open to anything and everything, and I have been for a long time. I'm pretty passionate about this topic because I kept getting beat up for years and years and years, and I had no tools in the toolbox to deal with anything. So, hence, this policy that's out there now, and I understand it's not perfect. I get it. I really do. Again, I wish we didn't have to deal with it at all, but we do. So, I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to conversation. I'm open to, really, anything that can help resolve the issue. I get what happens, and there's many discussions about, hey, if I put them on Penwood, they're just gonna move over to the street next over, and on Maryland, now they move over to Woodruff. I mean, man, I get it, I do. I personally don't have all the answers, so all the input we can get is needed and important.
The other thing I'll say, and I want you to hear me say this too as well, sir, is that just because the policies, I think, again, what Brian's recognizing is that there are aspects of this policy that may warrant being notified, and that there are some speed humps right now that are under consideration that are potentially might be installed or not be installed based on some of those changes. So just because there's some just because we're talking about changing the policy and potentially putting some speed hump installation on hold, doesn't mean that we think necessarily that a speed hump isn't warranted on Woodruff. That's not what it means. This is kind of like the conversation we had earlier about, it's hard to legislate things in a way that every location is either installed or not installed without any engineering judgment. Right now, the policy doesn't really allow for any engineering judgment. It's very strict, and I think we're just, once a speed hump is installed, it's very difficult to take it out. I think we all want to do the right thing by everybody, and so we want to take a breath and make sure that there's not anything that needs to change.
Finley, I appreciate your input, sir. Thank you. Okay. Again, what's the will and thought of the committee?
This is the part y'all talk.
I kinda go back to what I said, let's just put it back on next month's meeting, just to see if we brainstorm anything or seen anything that's jumped out at each one of us individually. It may be changes, may not be, but just to give it a review.
So the street that he's wanting it on, does it meet the criteria? We got
It
a
meets the
petition that says
criteria,
they want it?
and as far as it being on hold, I'm not really aware of that completely. We put it on hold. There were a few things that were brought to my attention that needed to be checked, that we hadn't checked, as far as how many driveways. I'd forgotten honestly about that portion of the policy, but we did check that part, and it does meet that criteria. At this point, it's just a matter of scheduling.
I think
40 citations.
if it meets the criteria,
Yeah.
I'd say we ought
He's
to do
wrote
it.
over 40
We got a
citations.
petition with the neighbors that live out there wants it,
Probably
and it
4
meets the
hours, 5
criteria.
hours. Does that mean anything?
Say that again, Mr. Holt.
He's wrote probably 40 citations in probably 5 hours of sitting in my driveway. And he won't write a citation unless it's over 35. 35's too fast on that street, as narrow as it is. You know, everybody thinks they can go 10 over. And somebody, one of the police officers said, well, they were talking about raising the speed. Well, if you do that, you just give them 10 more. You know, but he has written so many citations. And y'all can talk to him, y'all can pull his log and look at it, you know. If it wasn't a problem, trust me, I would not be here.
Well, let me clarify, we're not discussing, correct, whether we're doing that one on Woodruff or not. That's not the point of this discussion tonight, correct?
No, I
We're
mean,
just-
from,
yeah.
from my perspective, the policy as it's written needs to be enforced as any other policy, ordinance or law we've got in the city of Sherwood. If it's on the books, it needs to be enforced. That's just one man's opinion.
Are there any streets that would be classified as minor that, I guess, have less than 5,000 cars a day?
Mhm. Yeah, I believe so. I think you put mine up, but I think if you go through some of your reports, Maryland's on there. And Maryland's
So,
14,000
5
cars.
days, so
Yeah.
just shy of 3,000.
The majority of ours are probably gonna be under that. And that's just things to look at. I mean, if y'all wanna see these reports run some other way, some different criteria, we can provide those at the next meeting. We can get it to you before the meeting via email if you want to study it. If you got, we're looking for ideas.
No, and I think having as much information at your fingertips as possible. I mean, you know, running it, you know, at several different, you know, speed tolerances and, you know, seeing, I mean, where the brake thresholds are. I mean, the whole intent behind, you know, gathering this data and looking at speed tickets, that was to define, did we really have a problem, or was it a perception issue of, you know, someone who lives on the road and you go to check your mailbox and people are always going faster than, you know, when you're the one standing there. So, I mean, you know, whether we've chosen the right thresholds or not, I don't know, but the intent there was to define whether there was a problem or not.
The thing I like about the car count threshold is it tells you how many cars are moving down the road. That's fair, it's balanced. It's not my opinion of one road or your opinion of one road, it's a fact of how many cars travel down the road.
But if you've got more than 5,000 traveling down the road and you've got, you know, that means you got more people speeding. You know, I mean, so, we've got to find some way of dealing with that too. I mean, it may not be a speed cushion, but again, how do we deal with that? What tool do we put in the toolbox that says, you know, here's our action as a municipality.
Or swift enforcement on a few roads like that might be easier than a lot.
But on Maryland, like you were saying, perhaps we do need to do some type of sign showing what people are actually driving down to wake them up that, you know, you're hitting the neighborhood going 50. So,
You know, there's all, I mean, you can put up, temporary stuff, there's lights you can put up that just flash when you're, I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can do, but what are people gonna pay attention to? I mean, that's the reality of where we are, in my view.
no, sir, that's not legal and,
Talk to your legislator.
yeah,
It's not legal in Sherwood?
it's not legal in
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so, we're gonna, as a committee, we're gonna look at the policy, we'll come back and have more discussion next month. Am I following the will of the committee? Okay? Okay. Any other new business, anything that we've missed, anything new that just came up? And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second, all those in favor disappear, thank y'all. Randy, how you been, man?
I'm good, how about you?
I'm better than I deserve, for sure.
Well, I don't believe that.
Oh, just ask my wife, she'll tell you. Melinda, thank you. What kind of work do you do? Are you retired, or?
No, I still work. I should have retired. 7 years passed.
I got you.
I gotta find something to do before I can retire.
You gotta stay busy, I hear you.
So I'm still there. Hey, Finley, maybe this. I was just thinking, on that Kellogg thing, you talking about the grant money not being great.
I didn't know I was supposed to call.
High probability. If they added sidewalks to that proposal and then asked for grant money and squeeze some of that drainage into, because you gotta have drainage for the sidewalk work. Cause that's a bad street. Isn't it sidewalk, more drainage?
Yeah, I think you
So
have
you-
a much better chance of getting
Well,
that funded.
maybe you could do that.
Yeah, I think
That's a lot of money just,
Just because the road gets wet.
well, it's more than that. but-
Well, the other thing is, it'd be kind of a shame to install drainage and not anything with the road.
I know the biggest problem with it is we're spending $300,000 in the county and in North. I know it's our street. How the hell did that happen?
I'm not sure, I was gonna ask Brian about that.
Just lucky, I guess, I don't know.
What makes it Sherwood
Are
Street?
we sure it's our street?
Normally, if it's
They put a